Are you an independent musician feeling overwhelmed by the endless act of juggling creativity, business, and self-care? You're not alone. That's why I created the Artist Mind Map. The Artist Mind Map is a free blueprint designed to help you get clear on the route you need to take to attain your career goals in alignment to your artistic values. This is not just another random PDF page for the forgotten corners of your hard disk. It's a timeless roadmap you can use for decades to come. Think of it as a go-to overview to consult. When you grab your free mind map, you get exclusive access to a masterclass that will take your career to the next level. I use the same methodologies and systems for my high-end paying clients and students. So why am I giving it to you for free? Simple. I want to build a community of artists who can count on each other for safe spaces. Music saved my life. I believe that you have all that it takes to be the artist you were meant to be, if you're willing to put in the work. And more importantly, understanding what that work is. And the Artist Mind Map was designed to help you do exactly that. So if this resonates with you, go to artistmindmap.com and download this resource. artistmindmap.com. It's an incredibly globalized and digital world, and the landscape of the arts has transformed significantly. Social media, NFTs, even though that's not really a thing anymore, but AI-generated content, ever-evolving trends have opened new doors for artists while introducing unprecedented challenges and complexities that can get difficult to navigate without a mindset trained and equipped to cope with it all. Despite the overwhelming speed of change, though, there's an extraordinarily underrated, old school, almost ancient tool that stands its ground amidst the madness. This is a timeless, enduring asset that not just remains relevant for us, but does so with increasing significance. And the name of this tool is critical thinking. Let's discuss. Welcome to another session solo cast. These solo casts were designed to help independent artists and musicians like you navigate the very complex labyrinth that is your artistic practice and career. They're based on empirical research and experiences of my own career as an independent musician and an educator and coach working with artists just like you. The primary aim behind these sessions is to offer accessibility to the kind of education many of us need to work with in order to forward ourselves in these very confusing times as empowered and independent artists in the truest sense of the word. My journey with critical thinking. Quick confession before we get to it. My personal journey with critical thinking wasn't a simple one. For the longest time, the associations I had with the term were not the kind that got me feeling particularly inclined to jump for joy at its mention. In fact, it wasn't until I started working on my research skills in an academic context during my master's degree with my mentor, John Matthias, PRS award-winning musician, who's collaborated with the likes of Radiohead and Cold Cut. And he's been a guest on my podcast as well. If you search for John Matthias on the podcast page, you'll find that. Well, anyway, it wasn't until I started working with him that I realized that, one, how incredibly helpful a tool critical thinking is for us musicians, and number two, how misunderstood the system is. The good news is you don't necessarily have to be an academic to use this. It's very easily accessible. In fact, you're probably using it right now and have been for a while in some capacity or the other without realizing it. So today, I'd like to try and share some thoughts that might help you dial it in a bit more. What is critical thinking? Critical thinking refers to the ability to actively and skillfully analyze, evaluate, and synthesize information in order to make informed and logical decisions. Now, if that sounds too high-handed or too fancy, it's basically the ability to judge information on your own terms and draw your own conclusions about it. That being said, a lot of prominent scholars like Dr. Richard Paul, for example, describe it as the art of analyzing and evaluating thinking with the view to improving it. Debatable, some might find, but very well-respected scholar there with a view worth pondering over. Either way, critical thinking is the kind of thought approach that requires self-reflection and a willingness to hold space for multiple perspectives. Not merely just solve problems, but understand them in a deeper, more nuanced way. For artists, critical thinking could mean questioning the assumptions behind our work, evaluating the social and cultural context in which our art exists, and or ensuring that creative decisions are both purposeful and reflective of a broader understanding of the world. In short, it's a potential bridge between technical skill and thoughtful, impactful expression. The cerebral meeting the intuitive. Just a note. Though often considered a hallmark of Western philosophy, officially anyway, critical thinking has actually long been present throughout the world under different names and forms. In the East, for example, critical inquiry and reasoned thinking have been integral to various philosophical and spiritual traditions for millennia. In South Asia, India, Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge, was a practice rooted in rigorous intellectual reflection and discernment. This approach encourages practitioners to question assumptions and seek the underlying truth behind appearances. Ancient Indian thinkers like Chanakya, known for strategic thinking and political philosophy, employed logic, analysis, and strategic foresight in his work. Some other notable names would be Confucius, whose teachings in ancient China promoted ethical reasoning and reflection on moral conduct, and Prince Siddhartha / Gautama Buddha, that guy, who encouraged his followers to question authority and rely on personal insight and experience instead. In Japan, the Zen tradition has also emphasized direct experience and the deconstruction of preconceived notions through meditative practices, contemplation, to stimulate deep reflection and challenge conventional thinking. These examples are ample proof of how critical thinking has been a global phenomenon the whole time. This might be a good time to make a quick and valid distinction between critical thinking versus criticism. There's a crucial difference here. A common mistake a lot of us make is mixing the two up. Critical thinking and criticism are not the same thing, and mistaking them for the same can lead to many of us to associate it with a sense of negativity, judgment, or tearing down of ideas. Let's clear this up first, okay? Criticism tends to be reactive and indeed judgmental sometimes. Even though constructive criticism can be its benevolent twin, it'll usually focus on identifying what's wrong without necessarily providing a constructive path forward. Now, I'm all for constructive criticism, by the way, but we're going a little into the micro here. Example, random person criticizes a piece of art, focusing on perceived flaws or shortcomings without exploring the deeper questions of why those flaws, quote-unquote flaws, by the way, exist in the first place. What these flaws signify. And most importantly, even if they really are flaws in the first place. Critical thinking, on the other hand, is a proactive, thoughtful lens to adopt that encourages deeper engagement with the same situation. It analyzes all aspects of an idea and tries to identify both strengths and weaknesses by thinking through the possible reasons behind the observations involved and the implications they bring with them. Philosopher Matthew Lipman explains critical thinking as thinking that is responsive to and guided by intellectual standards, such as clarity, accuracy, relevance, and fairness. So, rather than focusing solely on fault finding, critical thinking asks why something works or doesn't work, and seeks ways to improve or refine ideas. See what I'm getting at? So, Applying critical thinking in the artistic process could translate to reflecting upon our work with specific questions. Some of these could be, what am I trying to communicate? Does this approach achieve that? What cultural or historical significance might this piece hold? What is my context? How do I frame this in a way so all of these factors are justified? Now, these are just a few examples. Point being, this deeper branded reflection can help us not just improve our technique, but also enable us to contribute more meaningfully with a deeper lens. At this point, you might be asking yourself, hopefully I did anyway, why does critical thinking get a bad rap? Here's the thing. Critical thinking, when misunderstood, does tend to carry a negative connotation, particularly in creative fields. Even when not mistaken as criticism, it can be seen as stifling to spontaneity, expression, or the more intuitive sides to the art-making process. Some fear that overanalyzing their work might rob it of its raw energy or emotional authenticity. But this view is rooted in an inherent misunderstanding of what critical thinking actually entails. In fact, far from inhibiting creativity, critical thinking could enhance it by allowing artists to make more informed, deliberate, and conscious choices, rather than relying on impulse alone. Research published in the Journal of Creative Behavior shows that creative thinking and critical thinking actually complement one another. Creative solutions often stem from critically analyzing existing ideas and discovering gaps on new perspectives. And with this approach, critical thinking can help artists move beyond cliches and superficiality, enabling us to create work that's innovative, thoughtful, and culturally relevant. Most importantly, slowing down. This is my favorite part about critical thinking. It forces me to slow down. Critical thinking demands that we artists step back, reflect on our influences, and resist the pressure to follow fleeting trends. This pause can be uncomfortable for a fast-paced society, but is actually potentially a secret superpower for producing meaningful and lasting work, especially in a world of rapid information, consumption, and instantaneous feedback. Why is critical thinking vital for artists today? I have a few ideas. Number one, navigating the information overload. As artists, we're constantly bombarded with way more content that is healthy for our art. Trends, music business advice, tutorials, feedback from social media. Without us thinking critically, this will inevitably lead to shallow or imitative work down the line, as we unconsciously replicate what's popular instead of developing a distinctive voice of our own. Critical thinking allows us to grow, nurture, and maintain that voice, and sift through this deluge of information, discerning what aligns with our values and what doesn't. Get it? Think about that one. Critical thinking allows us to grow, nurture, and maintain our own inner voices while sifting through this deluge of information we are bombarded with. Hence, discerning through that process which part of this information overload aligns with our values and which doesn't. Prominent cognitive development scholar Howard Gardner points out in his 5 Minds for the Future that critical thinking helps individuals develop what he refers to as a quote-unquote disciplinary mind. Not the sexiest terminology happening here, but worthy of taking note. A disciplinary mind that allows us to filter out the noise and focus on what truly matters for our craft. So that was my first suggestion, navigating the information overload. Number 2, fostering authentic innovation. Here's an essential tenet artists tend to forget. Innovation requires more than just creativity. It demands that we question the status quo and push boundaries, and do so in thoughtful ways. Critical thinking is key to this process. Rather than relying solely on inspiration, by applying critical thinking, we can methodically explore new ideas, reflect on the impact of our art, and break away from generic approaches. Number 3, engaging with social and cultural contexts. Now, for those of you following me for a while, I've also put out a podcast episode on ambiguity versus non-commitment, wherein I talk about the risks of getting too carried away with society's demands on our art. But nevertheless, art is both timelessly and deeply embedded in the social and cultural fabric of the practitioner's era. Again, that might sound a little fancy, but basically your zeitgeist, the era you're living in, and your art, at a subconscious or conscious level, are deeply intertwined with another. And to create work that's socially relevant and ethically sound, we do benefit greatly with a sense of awareness of the historical, cultural, and political context. Engaging with issues like race, gender, climate change, and technology, not that you have to, by the way, but just having a basic awareness of that requires not just artistic skill, but also critical thought. Even if we choose to not necessarily address these topics publicly or remain passionately neutral, which I personally do not judge and even support if need be, it helps to have a solid framework to use to arrive at that specific decision. In a study published in the Journal of Visual Culture, researchers emphasized that critical thinking is essential for artists who want to produce work that engages with pressing social issues. Again, I can only reiterate, even if we don't want our art to be a socio-cultural representative, without this mindset, we risk producing work that is somewhat tone deaf or disconnected from real-world events. Now that is not a risk to be underestimated. That's my third suggestion why critical thinking could be a great tool for you. Engaging with social and cultural contexts. Number 4, solving complex problems in art. This one's a no-brainer. From technical challenges like mastering new mediums, to conceptual dilemmas such as how to effectively communicate a theme, artists frequently face problems that require thoughtful solutions. This is where critical thinking equips us with the tools to break down these complex issues, explore multiple options, and arrive at creative, effective solutions that we are comfortable with. By the way, random tangent, I do apologize for using very different pronunciations on words. I just noticed I keep saying issues sometimes, which actually sounds snobby as fuck, and issues on another. Again, for those of you following me for a while, you'll know that I grew up on 4 countries, so I do have a bit of a destroyed and very hybrid diction of the English language. Little fun fact you had no need for whatsoever in your life, but there it is. Actionable steps to cultivate critical thinking as an artist. You know me, I try to give you as much, not random information, but stuff you can use. So I'd like to give you some steps you can actually try out for using critical thinking in your artistic or entrepreneurial ventures. Number 1, develop a reflection habit. Critical thinking begins with self-reflection. Take time to reflect on your artistic process. Ask yourself questions. Questions like, what were my goals for this piece? Did I achieve them? If not, why? If yes, why? What choices did I make? How did they influence these choices? Keeping a journal or portfolio notes can help you track your thought process over time, enabling deeper insight in your creative decisions. That's number 1. Develop a reflection habit in order to up your critical thinking skills. Number 2, engage with diverse perspectives. Sounds a bit generic, but bear with. Broaden your horizons by seeking out ideas, perspectives, and artistic traditions different from your own. even the kinds which might make you slightly uncomfortable. These could involve collaborating with artists from other cultures with a genuine intent to understand theirs, studying art history, immersing yourself in other art forms, completely different art forms like theatre or film if you're a musician, or music or film if you're an actor. You get the picture. Because engaging with a wide array of influences challenges your assumptions and facilitates more nuanced, deeper work. And there's nothing like being challenged, getting dragged out of our comfort zone to really give our art that X factor we're always trying to aim for. Okay, so that was number 2, engage with diverse perspectives. Not that generic after all, huh? Number 3, embrace constructive criticism. We had that one coming. Rather than fearing feedback, seek it out, albeit from the right people. Some ways you can go about this is join groups with common goals, artist communities, masterminds. For those of you who came late to the party, my artist mastermind is up for a waiting list. Shameless plug there, but just FYI. Attend workshops, online, offline, in person. Engage with communities where feedback is shared respectfully. Approach critique with an open mind and use them as opportunities for growth. Ask questions. Promote critical dialogue. I'm not saying go look for a fight or don't be that person who's just out to trigger people. That really isn't getting anyone anywhere anymore. But promote critical dialogue, respectable exchange of diverse views that challenge each mutually. Okay, so that was number 3. Number 4, seek mentorship and coaching. One could say I've vested interests by saying this as a professional artist coach on the side, apart from artistic practice, but mentorship is an invaluable tool for developing critical thinking. In fact, any one of you who's been at the game, although this is not a game, any one of you who are artistic practitioners for a while, if you've been doing this for over a decade or more, you know at some point you need support, not just peer support, but also support from people with more experience. Try and find mentors. The right mentor or coach will challenge you to think more deeply about your work, asking probing questions and offer new perspectives. Again, some research to drop here. According to research in the Journal of the Learning Sciences, mentorship plays a crucial role in developing high-order thinking skills. When you seek guidance from an artist who has more experience than you do in specific fields, you're automatically refining and upgrading your brain by engaging with them critically about your own practice. So those were the 4 suggestions for you to up your critical thinking skills. I'll list them again. Develop a reflection habit, engage with diverse perspectives, embrace constructive criticism, and seek mentorship and coaching. By the way, for those of you who have your notepads out, good on you. For those of you too lazy, I would probably belong to that group. All these solo casts, no, I shouldn't say all, but most of these solo casts come with the blog post. This one does. So if you just want to go through, read what I'm talking about, visit the link on the episode notes. Okay, conclusion. In today's art world, where opportunities and challenges abound, critical thinking is more important than ever. It enables artists to navigate a complex, rapidly changing environment with clarity and purpose. By distinguishing it from simple criticism and understanding its value, artists can harness the power of critical thinking to produce work that's not just innovative and authentic, but also deeply engaged with the world around them. Through reflection, openness to feedback, and mentorship, artists can cultivate this essential skill and, in turn, elevate their creative practice to new heights. Hope that helps. Hey folks, I hope you found that episode helpful. Here's a little request. If you did, consider sharing this episode with your folks. Think about the ways in which they might benefit the way you did. And please don't ever hesitate to reach out if you have queries. My name's TL. I'm an independent musician and educator and the founder of the Holistic Musician Academy.